The afternoon sunlight poured through the tall windows of the high-end restaurant, glinting off polished silverware and crystal glasses, casting a warmth that felt both comforting and deceiving. Everyone seemed perfectly calm, well-dressed clients sipping champagne, servers gliding gracefully from table to table, but behind the serene atmosphere, tension coiled like a snake ready to strike. At a corner table, Marcus Ellery, the CEO of one of the city's most influential tech firms, sat hunched over his glass, a faint tremor in his hand that no one noticed but for one person, Aria Monroe, a young waitress who had been working double shifts to keep her mother's medical bills paid. Aria's eyes, sharp and aware, followed his every movement as she refilled water and discreetly wiped tables, heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She knew that what she was about to do could cost her her job, or worse, but she also knew she couldn't stay silent. If you believe in kindness and second chances, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Journal. Aria had been serving Marcus for the last few weeks, noticing patterns no one else seemed to care about. She had watched the CEO, brilliant yet visibly worn down by stress, ignore the warning signs of exhaustion and bad decisions. Today, he had a glass of what appeared to be a rare, expensive liquor placed in front of him, a drink he never refused, even when it made him reckless. Something about the way the liquid caught the sunlight, golden, almost hypnotic, made Aria's stomach twist. She could see the signs of fatigue and despair etched into the lines of his face, the kind of weariness that led powerful men to make life-altering mistakes. She slipped a small piece of paper from her apron pocket, scribbled in shaky but urgent handwriting, "Don't drink it. Leave now." Her hands trembled as she approached his table under the guise of clearing a nearby plate. The world seemed to slow down around her, the clatter of dishes faded, the low murmur of other patrons dulled, and all she could hear was the hammering of her heart. Sliding the note across the table with a subtle flick of her fingers, she backed away, praying he would notice before it was too late. Marcus paused, mid-lift of the glass. His sharp, stormy gray eyes followed the paper as it slid across the table. A flicker of confusion crossed his face, quickly replaced by curiosity. He bent slightly, picked up the note, and read it silently. The room seemed to hold its breath. Aria's pulse raced, every muscle tense. She watched him for what felt like an eternity, afraid he might dismiss it, angry or embarrassed. Instead, something remarkable happened. Marcus set the glass down without taking a sip. His eyes, still sharp but softened, met Aria's across the room. Slowly, deliberately, he stood up, walking around the table. Reaching her, he gently took her hand in his, a gesture that sent a shock through both of them. The restaurant seemed to fade into the background as he whispered, almost to himself, "Thank you." But it was more than gratitude, it was recognition, a moment of human connection that neither of them would forget. Aria felt a mix of relief and disbelief. She had done what she thought was impossible, stopped a man from harming himself, however indirectly, and sparked something she couldn't yet name. But the story didn't end there. Marcus left the restaurant immediately, not for business, not for another meeting, but to walk outside into the sunlight, breathing deeply as though the weight of the world had been momentarily lifted. He walked without purpose, letting the wind hit his face, trying to remember the simple pleasures of life he had long buried under boardrooms and bottom lines. He thought of the mistakes he had made, the relationships neglected, the friendships sacrificed, the countless nights lost to stress and isolation, and felt a surge of clarity that he hadn't felt in years. Back inside, Aria returned to her duties, but the energy around her had shifted. Patrons whispered about the tall, intense man who had left so abruptly, but no one knew the truth. Her colleagues, unaware of the note, went on with their tasks, while Aria quietly sat down in a moment of exhaustion, feeling an unfamiliar swell of hope. She had acted out of instinct, guided by compassion, and it had made a difference. Over the following weeks, Marcus's life slowly began to change. He started small, he declined unnecessary meetings, walked in the park during lunch breaks, and reached out to people he had neglected. He even called his estranged sister, a gesture he had postponed for years out of pride. Arya's note, simple and anonymous, had sparked a ripple effect that reached far beyond that one restaurant. One morning, as Arya was arranging flowers on tables before the lunch rush, she noticed a familiar figure standing hesitantly near the entrance. Marcus, dressed casually and without his usual guarded demeanor, smiled at her. He handed her an envelope with no words, only a look of genuine appreciation. Inside was a note: "You reminded me that life is fragile and worth protecting. Thank you, Arya. You saved more than one glass that day, you saved me." Tears blurred her vision. For the first time in a long while, she felt that her efforts, her sacrifices, her instinctive courage mattered in a way she had never imagined. It wasn't just about saving a life, it was about the extraordinary power of small acts of kindness, the courage to speak up even when fear clenched your throat, and the reminder that every person has the ability to change someone else's path. Arya continued her work at the restaurant, but she carried a newfound confidence and warmth. Every time a patron ordered a drink, she remembered Marcus and the note, realizing that courage could sometimes come in the form of a small slip of paper. Marcus, too, transformed. He didn't become a perfect man overnight. He stumbled, faltered, and wrestled with old habits, but he approached life differently. He invested time in people, offered mentorship to young professionals struggling under pressure, and became a silent advocate for mental health in corporate spaces. And though he never revealed the full story publicly, the memory of Arya's courage remained a compass guiding him toward compassion. The story reached the city in whispers. Colleagues, friends, and even strangers spoke about the mysterious waitress who had stopped a man from spiraling out of control. People began to see the world through a different lens, realizing that acts of bravery and kindness weren't always loud, they were often quiet, subtle, and transformative. Arya's life changed as well. Her mother's health improved, thanks in part to the extra shifts she could afford without feeling crushed by financial strain. She pursued her own dreams, inspired by the realization that courage and empathy could open doors she had never imagined. And though she never sought recognition, she quietly carried the knowledge that she had impacted someone's life in a profound and lasting way. Near the end of that transformative year, Marcus returned to the restaurant once more, this time not as a CEO on edge, but as a man humbled and grateful. He asked to speak with Arya privately, and when they stood face to face, he spoke with a sincerity that shook her heart: "You showed me the humanity I had forgotten to nurture. Because of you, I remember what it means to care, for myself, for others, for life. I will never forget it." Arya smiled, tears brimming, and for the first time, she understood the immense weight and beauty of her small, decisive act. In that moment, they shared not just gratitude, but a profound acknowledgement that sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the most power. If this story touched your heart, please engage with this video, like, comment, and share it, and let others know the power of courage and compassion. Let us take a moment to remember that every life matters, and even a single note can spark a transformation. The sunlight poured again through the restaurant's windows, warm and unwavering, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch into the future. Life, fragile and fleeting, could be changed in an instant, by words, by courage, by the quiet insistence to do what is right. Arya returned to her work with a gentle pride, and Marcus walked into the daylight, ready to face the world anew, both of them forever connected by a moment that would echo through their lives in ways neither could have predicted. And sometimes, it takes only one person to remind another that hope exists, that kindness matters, and that a life worth living is always just within reach.